Awesome. Everyone, welcome back to Grit Daily Startup Show. I'm your host, Jordan French. I have an awesome guest with me today. I've known for years,
Yeah.
and that's Wendy Glavin. Wendy, welcome to the
Hi.
show.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you for having me.
So we're going to talk about something very different. Usually we're talking with a startup or some other company, some SME, all around the world, and they're always looking at what's next, Wendy. But here, you encourage people to look backwards.
Yes, this process I created during the pandemic because I wanted to help people. People who lost their job. Here's my job. People who lost their jobs and income. And the core of all this is really building on your strengths. And I spoke to a lot of different people who were like, I lost my job on Wall Street. I'm 65 years old. Like, what can I do next? And it's that I said, well, what are your skills? Like, you must have other skills that led you to this point. So people forget a lot about that. They define themselves by their current skills, current job. And, if you look back, you can find, a lot of different things about yourself, meaning transferable skills. And startups are having trouble retaining talent and finding skilled talent. So I would say if you start with that, you'd be able to find, certain transferable skills that are used in, all different positions in different industry sectors.
It certainly, Wendy, it reminds me, what you're sharing reminds me of the book, Who Moved My Cheese? I think that's the full.
Yes.
To frame this really well, this is something that everyone can relate to, right? Even if you have a fantastic business, there's always something that changes. Along can come, everything from different mobility like automobiles or airplanes, different ways of communication, obviously the internet, all the way through, telephony devices. More recent disruption, right, that's come from the consumer side, the adoption of blockchain and buying cryptocurrencies, use of AI tools. It comes seemingly at a breakneck pace. Just to get down to that framing, though, Wendy, are things changing faster than ever before, making this even more necessary to sort of have that self-awareness that you're starting to describe?
Well, absolutely. I mean, AI, has really taken off. I think I shared an article today, McKinsey or something about, we're not talking about Chat GBT. I mean, certainly a lot of people use that, but, AI, Gen AI. But for example, I mean, what I posted was, you can take free courses on Coursera, or, you're going to be left behind if you don't know anything about AI. Coursera, Udemy, podcasts, webinars, YouTube. I mean, it's all over the place. I mean, frankly, I try to find other things besides AI, to post and share. But for example, so in terms of my expertise in technology, that only came from my clients, learning a lot from them, asking them a lot of questions, and doing a ton of research. So people seem to forget about doing current research. Not, for example, things are changing at such a rapid pace. So something that was written about 2 weeks ago, while it still would be pertinent, I'm talking about doing current research per day. So it's, continuing to learn and continuing to upskill. So
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
sorry.
I was going to say that sort of continuous education component, some of that's structural and built into some careers. Sounds like you're encouraging it for absolutely everyone to sort of stay relevant with, I think is your key operative word. I think inquiring minds already just watching and listening to us here. I think there's some curiosity about you. How do you fit into all this? Perhaps beyond, adding maybe philosopher, I could add many titles, but how do you fit into this sort of like the rubric where you have this position where you can start thinking about how people think about work?
Yes. I mean, I have a good example. This is not client based, but, I moved out of New York City to Long Island, and, I bought a house of which I had a lot of foundational problems and sold it within 2 years. And at that time, I wasn't working. I have a business coach, and I felt really guilty. It's like, well, I'm not really working. I'm just working on the house. And so she said to me, you need to redefine how you look at work. So, for example, I need a new septic system. I was, next to wetlands. So you have to do a ton of research to know, like, who to call, what to do. You know what I mean? All of that.
Hmm.
And I am research oriented. So it's a mindset change. So, I mean, for example, that I'm heavily research oriented. So that doesn't mean I'm not doing anything just because, I'm in the midst of moving. So I think that startups in particular they need skilled talent. They're finding it difficult to, find skilled talent.
Mhm.
But if you look back, which is the Decode Your Value process, at your background, at your core values, at your experiences, at your relationships, at your interests, you will find transferable skills. I mean, I guarantee it. And startups in particular, when they're pitching to investors, we know there's, the problem, the solution, all that kind of stuff, but let's get out of the just talking about the facts and the stats and talk about what you bring to the table. Like, let me give you an example. I judged a global blockchain pitch fest, and the person who introduced it was Sir John Hargrave. And I was just so impressed with, he wasn't even involved in the pitch. He was just the introduction. And so I asked to interview him about his new book. He and Evan I can't say it right, Cornucopias. But, that's a perfect example. I mean, he's so inspiring and motivational. So, I mean, that's what I want to try to help people do. Don't think just because you're over 50, like, that's it. Like, I can't do anything. I'm done.
Very Gary Vaynerchuk thing to say there.
Exactly right.
In their
That's
70s and
funny.
80s. It's not too late. Although you might be onto something, right? You have these sort of Ray Kroc characters at a much older age, serve something really obviously meaningful and impactful and substantial. Back to the sort of the way you describe this, which is the decode
Your
your
value.
value, right? So let's deconstruct that for everyone so it can relate to, looking backwards. What exactly do those words mean to you?
So this is going to be, but I actually have a visual representation also so people can fill out it because it's a little bit of an abstract term.
Sure, we'll
So
drop it into the article, the version of this. Yeah.
yeah, I have again, it's a tree. And so the foundation,
Yeah.
that's your, that would be like who you are. The
Mhm.
branches, the roots would be your core values. As you go up, into the what? The branches. Okay. So then is your personality. I guess that's part of the trunk, your personality, because, that doesn't really change. And then significant life events. I'll give you an example. I lived in the south of France. It sounds really fancy, but one of my colleagues is a vegetarian, and she was asked, is there anybody that you can recommend, to do smoked meats and all that kind of stuff. So she didn't want to do that, because of moral issues.
Right.
So she had me do it. Now, what did I know about it? Nothing really, but I went back to, this is a long time ago, the south of France, and they sell, that type of food in the markets. And, I know a bit of French. And so the agency in Montreal, they don't speak English. So that was like a really good type of thing because I was able to translate that type of thing, my France experience, into being able to help a French company.
Sounds like a big part of this is just being maybe aware and then also open to opportunities.
Yeah, but the thing is, based on my experience,
Yep.
people don't think that way. People define themselves by the work they do, by their current skills.
Mhm.
They don't define themselves in terms of what we talked about, looking back. I can't even tell you how many sort of skills I've been able to build on. So I don't want to talk about myself. I'll just say quickly, I wasn't allowed to live at home after college, right? You already heard that I majored in acting. My professor said I was too dramatic. So I landed my first job at General Electric. Now, if you take acting and General Electric, like how does that So I gave briefings. I had top security clearance from the CIA, and I would give briefings to new employees every single week. And, that's an example of how you can take a skill, a presentation that I was able to use throughout my career. I'm able to use on podcasts. So that's the thing that people forget about, what they've done in the past. So it's upskilling and reskilling, but not in such a daunting way.
And how do you prioritize that? I just heard you describe, potentially acting, being dramatic. Wendy, perhaps that's sort of its own skill set. Smoking meats, speaking French, have a sort of this potpourri, right, of skills just for yourself, and just to make this really applicable to almost anyone, probably almost everyone listening, starts to look backwards, follow your advice here, and think about various skills he or she has picked up over time. It's a lot. So how do you decide what's a priority? How do you decide what's relevant? How do you decide what's applicable to, something that drives that next, career move or direction towards being a bit happier?
So these are called soft skills. So soft skills are in demand. Okay, they're currently in demand. So soft skills like emotional intelligence, curiosity, forever learner, empathy, creativity. I mean, I can go through it, but those are examples of skills that people don't think about. They're called life skills. So your life skills are transferable. So all of us have life skills. For example, like if you played a sport, right? So then perhaps you would know about teamwork or leadership. I have a colleague that enjoys baking. She has nothing to do with that in her business. I mean, she's involved in politics and financial communications.
Right.
So what she does is she has baked goods. She hosts events and she brings that to her events. So she's known for that. That's a differentiator. So people will say, big events, people will say, oh, Faye, where are your baked goods, or where's your chocolate cookies, or, whatever it is. So that's a differentiator for her. So I think that if you really think about I'd say personality is another differentiator. People say, what makes you different? I'm honest. That would be the big thing. So if your idea is not innovative, or I don't want to use that word, then, maybe you're not going to be able to raise money. So I've written a lot of articles on this since the pandemic, and there is a visual version because, as I said, it's complicated. Now, when you say, how do you pick? It really depends on the person. Like, I do think that living in France was a huge change for me. It gave me more of a global view. You can choose anything. Like, I have a puppy, and he's only a couple years old. So I've been walking him more and taking him to the beach, stuff that I hadn't done. So when you said how to be happier in life, it's once you, decode your value, you can design your life. That's sort of an idea for a book.
Forthcoming book, you heard it here first.
That's true. You absolutely.
And so, it sounds, Wendy, like people are making an assumption. They're either discounting or dismissing their own skills, maybe not just soft sort of soft skills, but also hard skills. Why is that? Why might most people be making that, sort of error, or in creating that obstacle from accessing the skills that they have from their pasts?
Why I'm smiling is because I don't want to say the real reason. I'm trying to think of a positive way to say it. People just either don't have the time, don't think of themselves in that way, or, too worried about, current things. Worried, I'm just going to use technical, worried about AI taking over the job, worried about Trump, worried about, that people can't get out of that, get out of that thinking. But as I say to colleagues, what is it? Just for example, what are you going to do? How are you? There's nothing that we can do. We can vote, but other than that, there's not whatever side, you vote and that's it. But spending your life focused on that is getting you nowhere. So I kind of believe in always learning something new. And it sounds like a cliche, but it really isn't. I mean, I really do. I mean, you might ask, how does like a person who majored in communications learn about tech? How? So it's the same thing that I'm recommending. Reading, doing research, taking courses, that kind of thing, but have the motivation to stop worrying about the future and think about yourself, about your past.
And to maybe frame this again, but in a different way, sounds like you're describing, Wendy, an allocation problem. Perhaps people are most often focused or on the wrong things, otherwise known as distracted.
Yes.
Perhaps distracted by things that they don't have control over, or limited control over. You exemplified some elected official that likely most people don't know directly, right? And some whatever it is, foreign events, what the Fed funds rate is, maybe things you just don't control, and one sort of cost of doing that is a lack of focus and time into put into things that each individual does control.
Right. I mean, I think there's burnout. People are scared. There's a lot of emotional reasons. I mean, it's just so easy. Obviously I'm not on the young side. There's just so much available to us in terms of, books and videos. And I mean, it's so easy to learn, I think, but you have to have that motivation and that desire. But let's just use AI. I mean, that's it. Like, you better get up to date on AI. And if nothing else, although I shouldn't say it because, my sons like to be private, but my one son, he moved back from LA. He's an entertainment person. So in the midst of he has a movie coming out in April. But anyway, he has a job which he hates, like it's unrelated. So then I saw a job for AI writer, and it said like, editing and, all the kinds of stuff that he can do. I mean, that's sort of like to take the writing of AI and make sure that it makes sense and it's correct and the grammar's correct, that sort of thing. So, I mean, there's so many directions that we can go in, regardless of your age.
It sounds like you've got a couple clients, and some of them you're related to. You're already consulting for at least one of your sons, Wendy.
Listen, they don't want anything from me, meaning my opinion. I mean, my son would describe me as like high maintenance, like always right, aggressive. Things are always right, aggressive, outgoing, and then I'm like, well, aren't there like any positive things? Like, bossy. I'm teasing. I mean, obviously I'm loving and there's, good sides to it.
Yeah. And look, if we may, just so we have, they're like maybe really good example that people listening and watching can learn from. Are there tenets of the system of decoding your value that you could apply to yourself, especially
I'm sorry.
based on?
Could you ask the question again?
Yes. Are there tenets of the decoding your value system that you could apply to yourself, Wendy?
Well, yes. I mean, one example is this book. I mean, this has been a long time thing, and actually the son I talked about, he's written 2 books. I mean, I would write nonfiction. He wrote fiction, but I'm always like, well, maybe I should start it this way. Maybe I should. He said, Mom, there's no set way. Like, you can do whatever you want. But I'm kind of hung up on that. So that's an example. Another example is I have knee replacements. So how I can build on that, since I really like sports, is, get a, what's it called? Not a train, not a, you know what I mean.
Looks like you're about to play pickleball with that.
I think that would then show my age. Something to do at home, like a Stairmaster, that type of thing. How do I apply it to myself? I mean, I've always been an advocate for people. My father used to say, he was a lawyer. He used to say, you're not going to make a good lawyer until you see the other side. You're more of an advocate. I mean, that was such fantastic advice. I want to just use a couple examples from clients. So one of the clients a number of clients pitching investors or prior to pitching investors. And also we had, and not an argument, but a discussion. His website was all black. And I said, okay, well, that doesn't, we need to put some colors in. And he felt that black is like really chic or really, I said, yeah, but it's, people can't just sit and read black and white. But, in getting to know him, he lives in Berlin. He's, a black belt, speaks 8 languages. I mean, what an interesting person. And he was young. He's young or was young and has long hair. So I figured he's going to get up and pitch in front of investors and people are going to be like, this kid is too young and all that kind of stuff. So I pushed him to talk about his background. Anyway, Engrave that's the blockchain wallet, is the 7th largest company in the world. There was another girl who was from China and didn't speak a lot of English, like very, very shy. And I would talk to her about, I hate to bring this up now because it sounds political and I don't mean that, but you have an advantage. You need to think about that. She had visited many other countries. She was working in this blockchain educational process. Anyway, she was accepted into Columbia a very prestigious Columbia Business Blockchain Accelerators program. I'm going to tell you this. I have never, ever not been successful with the clients I've worked with. And that's a pretty strong statement. And the reason is because I'm honest and I have, a lot of experience and I know when something's going to work and when it's not going to work. So, my success is based on other people's success.
Yeah, certainly. I don't know as much as many people do about coaching, certainly people who do it. But yeah, it does seem to be a competitive field. And if you're always successful, that's quite a statistic to be able to share. Is there a particular type of client that you're looking for, Wendy?
Yeah, I really enjoy working. Thank you. I really enjoy working with tech startups. I work with an AI fintech company. This is so exciting to me. They were two people, and I would have debates with the CEO. So we had 2 new APIs. He didn't want to do anything about that because he said nobody cares and it's not that interesting. So to prove him wrong, there was a spread in McKinsey all about APIs, also in Harvard Business Review. So I went down to WeWork, that's where he was, and I said, look at this. Anyway, these APIs, we got 45 earned media in trade publications like FinExtra, AI, and he raised $6.7 million in funding and ended up having an exclusive article in Forbes, and then grew and grew and grew. So I think it's really exciting. It's exciting to be on the other end of that or on the back end of that. And also, tech startups always think they feel that they're innovative and they're excited and they're passionate. And so I like to be around that. Sometimes kill that passion. I'm kidding.
You could or redirect, some of that energy, and certainly get people to reflect. I think that's a big part of what's come out of this episode. And so, Wendy, how can people find you if they're interested in working with you on decoding their value or looking backwards, or perhaps they run a tech startup and they're interested in getting in touch with you?
So my website is wendyglavin.com. My email address, I'm going to have to spell Glavin. It's G-L-A, V as in Victor, I as in ice cream, N. Now, everybody gets that wrong, and I always say it's my ex-husband's fault. So everybody says Galvin. So Wendy at wendyglavin.com. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter. You can connect with me anyway.
Yeah, certainly. Sage advice, certainly something for us to think about, decoding our own value. I'll run through your rubric, certainly at some point after this show. For those listening, you'll see this out on Apple Podcasts and really anywhere you like to listen to your podcast. The article version of this, of course, will be on BritDaily.com and out in Apple News for all of the Mac and iPhone users. Wendy, I'll give you the last word.
I think I talk a lot, so it's a little hard to give me one word. To give me one word, I'd say thank you, and it's really wonderful to see you. It's been a long time, and I love those kinds of relationships, colleagues that you've known for a long time and haven't been in touch, and you can just write an email and you just connect. I'd say to people, like, regardless of your age, if you're young and you don't know what you want to do, if you're over 50, I'd really like for you to get motivated, inspired, because you can get a job, you can find other things, you can switch careers. You just have to, have the motivation. That's it. And a positive mindset.
Yeah, that glass is always half full, Wendy. You don't lose until you give up. That's what I
Right.
say. All right, well, for everyone watching and listening, until next time, thank you.